Good morning. Good morning, everybody. What a wonderful, how about getting up Saturday morning? You know, we were terrified. Somebody go, I really want to sleep in. And you wouldn't be here. So people were emailing me saying, I got this email that if I didn't, I might not get in. And yeah, that was the truth of it. We still have people that are in line coming in right now, okay? I'm Joanne Webb. I'm the director of the Career Center Western Region, and we welcome you to the Creative Classroom. And it's a symposium for arts education all around, and specifically for our people who are in the entertainment industry and in the performance arts community. So if that's who you are, or that's what you're interested in, you are definitely in the right place. So we want to welcome you. We want to let you know, how many of you are new to anything with the Actors Fund? Is this new to you, some of you? Okay, great. So I just want to give you a little brief understanding of who the Actors Fund is. And I always like to start with our mission statement, which really says it all. But the Actors Fund is a national human services organization that fosters stability and resiliency and provides a safety net for performing arts and entertainment professionals over their lifespan. So programs that we include are social services, emergency financial assistance, some people have used the financial wellness program, the health care and insurance counseling, and housing. But the part that my domain is the Career Center. And so I would tell you, everything I talked to you about was really to create that resiliency that you're looking for. But what we're going to help you do in the Career Center is really get some sense of stability. Because what we do, which I'm very excited about, is we deal with developing stability by preparing artists we serve for finding sustainability through secondary meaningful work that they can do alongside with their work in the business, right? So that's really what we're about. And that is very aligned with what we're doing today, because the Teaching Artist program, for me, is definitely a very, very strong component of what we accomplish. We have been able to get a lot of people opportunities, work, get them trained, and you're going to meet some of those people today in this particular area, and it has been so helpful. I'm going to tell people to turn their ringers off, just as a, that's my cue for that, right? And anybody lights up, I'll say no smoking too. So basically, we're really here to get you, really getting you focused on something that's important to you. And what we found was, and what I found, because I've been a teaching artist myself, is that as an artist, being able to go out there and utilize those skill sets as an artist and teach people, and in many cases change people's lives. I'm somebody, and I'm not ashamed to say it at all, due to learning disabilities as a kid and all the things that you have to go through, I wouldn't be standing here in front of you today if it weren't for arts in my education. That saved my bacon over and over again, because my creativity really helped me to beyond survive, It helped me learn how to read, it learned how to write. I learned how to memorize things because of scripts, because I wanted to be in things, so I learned how to do it, And so there's just so many things that you get out of this. So a little bit of a history, what we're doing today. This is our third time that we've done a symposium of this nature. We did one downtown at the at a different school, and it was the Performing Arts School downtown, and it was wonderful. And then second, we went to the Music Center last year. How many of you were there for the Music Center? So you remember. And this year we have this beautiful, beautiful space to be able to present what we're doing and give you a good feel for the day. So let me give you an idea of what the day is going to look like. After I speak, we're going to have our keynote speaker, and then we're going to have a speaker who is going to be talking to you about a wonderful program called the Miracle Project, which is about working with kids with autism, which really helps us to really be in that inclusivity piece that we really think is important. We will go from there to a panel. And that panel will be on arts education, all people that are working in the area. Now, on your programs, you probably noted that originally we had Roberto Martinez, who's the superintendent of the Central District of LAUSD. Well, he had a family emergency and he won't be able to be here today with us, but Stephen McCarthy, who is, I just met him about a month and a half ago, and he's just amazing. He has another gig that he's doing. He's racing here from across town to be here on the panel, then he'll have to leave right afterwards, but he will be on our panels, and he's the director of the arts education program at LAUSD. Okay, so it's a really, really good deal. We're also going to show The Ripple Effect, which is this wonderful documentary film which I've had the opportunity to see, which one of our teaching artist graduates from 2008, Bunny Hall, produced, wrote, and directed, and that will be really very interesting. We'll see if we have some time for Q&A after that, and then we're going to do lunch and networking, and we'll be doing that on that side of the building. And then we will be coming back after lunch, and we will have a career focus on being a teaching artist with 3 teaching artists who have gone through our program and are doing amazing things right now. And that will be followed by a wonderful presentation. We're going to all be like 7-year-olds, and we're going to be in a classroom setting to learn what it would be like to learn how to write a story as a 7-year-old. And we have a wonderful teaching artist to present that. So, and I want to move you forward. We want to thank Sony, and I'll go more into that, for their grant, which allows us to do what we're doing today. I also want to thank the Wallace Annenberg Center for this wonderful, wonderful venue, and for working so closely with us. And with that, I had the opportunity to work very closely with Mark Slavkin, who is the Director of Education here at the Wallace. And I mean, I can't say enough about Mark, because he's one of those guys that when you say, oh, I'm working with Mark Slavkin, people say, they have this look on their face, they go, oh, they just go, wow. They just smile at you, and they go, yeah, oh, wow, you're so lucky. All my Jewish friends call him a mensch, and the ones that aren't Jewish say, wow, what a guy, But, and I get all that now, I really do, after working with him. But a little bit more about him is that, as well as working here, he is widely recognized as a national leader in the field of arts education. He serves as chair of the board of directors for the California Alliance for Arts Education, the statewide policy for advocacy organizations. Mark's impact on this community is outstanding, and I couldn't even say enough words, and if I could find all the words, I would be spending the entire time telling you them, and I'm not going to do that. I just want you to welcome, with clapping hands, which I know you will, Mark Slavkin.
Good morning. That was really nice. A little embarrassing too, but thank you, and welcome to the Wallace Annenberg Center for the Performing Arts, which we call the Wallace. We are a very new organization in a very old building. This was the Beverly Hills Post Office, built in 1933 in the midst of the Depression, when there was a commitment to public art and to elegant public spaces that celebrate democracy. that seem a little cliche now because they don't build post offices that look exactly like this today, at least that I'm aware of. And when it stopped being a post office, and the city acquired this building for public use, our organization was created to bring it to life as a Center for Performing Arts. So we have 2 theater performance spaces. This room, which is the Lovelace Studio Theater, this was the sorting room in the post office. So this big space existed. The loading dock is on the other side of that wall, and they'd bring all the mail here. They had tables and these little cubby things, and they would sort out the mail. So we've converted it into a black box theater that has lots of cool capacity. And then in the backyard of the post office, we dug a really deep hole and built a 500-seat new state-of-the-art theater with this enormous stage. So we have 2 performance spaces and some classrooms that we'll see during lunch. For those of you who want to come back tonight, Hershey Felder is here performing an amazing show about Beethoven. He's an incredible actor and musician and pianist. But enough about the Wallace. We hope that you'll come. Well, let me just ask, how many of you are here for the very first time? Wow. Well, we hope you'll come back. We present music and dance and theater and a whole array of things, and we want you to become part of our family. I have the privilege of just setting the stage this morning a little bit to give kind of an overview of some of the themes that we want to address. I'll start with good news, which is this is kind of a golden age for the arts and entertainment in the LA area. We just see upswing in film and TV production, the growth of things like Netflix and Amazon that are creating an enormous amount of content. The arts and culture sector is growing with new organizations and institutions coming online and many thriving, although there are always challenges. And we're in an upswing within the K-12 school system. As state budgets increase, so do support for arts education. So there's actually a shortage in California right now of credentialed arts teachers, which is a problem. It's a nicer problem to have than laying off music teachers, but there aren't enough. So it's an exciting time to think about as artists, musicians, actors, designers, choreographers, writers, whatever hats you may wear. How do I want to navigate among and between these sectors in the arts and entertainment? And how can I make the biggest difference? What is my personal mission? What do I stand for? What do I care about? And why am I in the arts in the first place? Because the reasons that inspired you to become a performer, a writer, director, choreographer, actor, to move people, to inspire people, to engage people, to raise issues that need to be raised, those issues remain today. And you can work in different settings or different formats, but I don't think the personal mission necessarily changes. So I'd encourage you to start from that place. What do I care about? How do I want to make a difference? There may be incredible opportunities working with kindergarten students, but that might not be part of your personal mission to spend your day with 5-year-olds, or it may be. I mean, that's fantastic. Not all of us are cut out to do the same work and engage people in the same way, so this is really about thinking about your personal mission. The term teaching artist has grown currency certainly in the last 15 or 20 years, particularly in the K-12 world and among nonprofit arts organizations. We have a specific meaning in our heads when we talk about teaching artists. It's often to contrast someone who is a performing artist is different than being a teaching artist. Some people could wear both of those hats, but a teaching artist is a professional artist who brings that talent and expertise, the energy, the passion, the commitment to work in any number of educational settings. I have a friend and colleague, Eric Booth, who has a definition. Teaching artist is a practicing professional artist with the complementary skills, curiosities, and sensibilities of an educator, who can effectively engage a wide range of people in learning experiences in, through, and about the arts. So that's one kind of definition of teaching artist. I wouldn't get stuck on the definition, though, because if we step back from being a teaching artist and just ask, what does it mean to be an artist, period, when we think of the greatest artists, they are educators, they are scholars, they are artists. Leonard Bernstein wasn't doing his concert for young people because he needed extra work to supplement his income, and it was a day job. Wynton Marsalis does not travel the world today engaging young people in jazz because he couldn't get a gig as a professional musician. It is core to his personal mission. Gustavo Dudamel, who leads the LA Philharmonic, isn't committed to Youth Orchestra LA and El Sistema in Venezuela, from which he comes, because he couldn't cut it as a real conductor, and he needed to do that. So I want to let go or reduce, if anyone have that stigma, the idea of this is a side gig for artists who aren't cutting it. I just don't think that's true. I don't know if it's ever true, shouldn't be true, and none of us should enter the conversation through that lens. Gets back to what do great artists do and what is my personal mission. I have a colleague, Larry Scripp, who is at the New England Conservatory, who came up with the framework of artist, teacher, scholar. It's kind of Venn diagrams that great artists are engaged as artists, teachers, and scholars. How they navigate that will vary widely, obviously, but that's what great artists do. And we should start from that point as we're training the next generation of artists. This is what great artists do. We at the Wallace are partners with the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., that has a program called Citizen Artist Fellows, that people around the country are nominated, and they pick 6 or 8 Citizen Artist Fellows per year who are really great artists, many of them young and emerging artists, committed to using their art to make a difference. So for example, Vijay Gupta, who is a violinist with the LA Philharmonic, it's a long story, but was inspired to create something called Street Symphony that brings colleague musicians and singers into Central Jail and into shelters in the Skid Row area to connect people who are homeless to the arts. That's what we mean by a citizen artist, that he has a great full-time day job as a member of the LA Philharmonic that pays incredibly well, but his personal mission is to make a difference, and he was nominated and selected as one of the Citizen Artist Fellows. So I'd encourage you to think of that term, a citizen artist, that how do I marry my artist hat and my citizen hat? And this is a time where the world needs us more than ever as citizens, actively engaged to challenge what is happening and to help heal communities and help give voice to those who may not have their voices heard. So what does it mean to use my artistry and my citizenship to make a difference in the world? And I think that's kind of the theme that I would encourage you to think about today. There's a document I shared with Joanne, and you may want to look at, called Creating Capacity, that is on the Kennedy Center website that you can Google. Sort of a framework of looking at artists in these various roles. And you're using actually a different term than teaching artists. It's sort of a continuum in that report called Creating Capacity. Presenting artist, interacting artist, collaborating artist, and master instructional artist. So the idea that, not that one's better than the other, but there is a continuum. So there's not a single right way to do any of this. There are lots of flexible opportunities. There are those who devote part of every week during the year working as a teaching artist within a K-12 school setting. There are those who are touring professionally as artists and have a couple times a year where they want to lead master classes or work with a colleague organization in terms of outreach opportunities. So all of that range of work, in my mind, is wonderful and important. And it's not like a right way and a wrong way. And this is like a good teaching artist, bad teaching artist. It's finding your niche, your place, and how you can best contribute. Just to wrap that part, I think the key part to me is the artist part, actually. That for any of this work, you need to bring your skill and passion and talent as an artist. If someone's really not a very good artist, they're probably not going to really be effective as a teaching artist. So, at your core, what do you offer that is special to you, and what are you best at? What are you passionate about? If your whole life has been in ballet, teaching hip-hop may not really be the place for you. And faking it as a hip-hop artist is a lesser use of your talent than doing ballet really, really well, if that is indeed your passion. The world needs both great teachers of ballet and great hip-hop artists. So what is authentic to who you are? Because whoever you're working with, whether they're young people or teachers or adults or anybody, I think can quickly tell, maybe in the first 30 seconds, is this person the real deal that I'm going to engage with and take seriously, or is there something that feels phony or inauthentic? So who are you authentically, what do you believe in, and what are you best at? The field, as I said, of teaching artists is growing and doing and doing really well. And there are institutions and organizations that exist now that didn't maybe 10 or 15 years ago. There's something called the Teaching Artists Guild that you could look up online that provides resources and support for the field. The important work that Actors Fund is doing today is sort of building awareness and understanding, but then the follow-up opportunities that you'll learn about to engage in more in-depth training as teaching artists. Some of those programs are fairly new. In the olden days, people would just sort of self-declare, I'm a teaching artist and I start tomorrow. There's something wonderfully empowering about that, but there are a few other professions that really work that way that allow you to say, I'm a doctor and I'm just going to start tomorrow. They usually want like a license and like proof that you've actually gone to school and all of that, passed tests and all that. We're not quite there. We're in between just self-declaring I'm a teaching artist and some formal training that you must go through and have so many hours and mentorship and so on and get an official certificate that says like I'm a licensed teaching artist. And our field is mixed about that. Some of us aspire to that kind of like prestige or credibility that comes with that. Others worry about bureaucracy and formalization and who will define quality and all of that. So I think that's still an ongoing discussion and debate. But there are more opportunities now for becoming a teaching artist, training as a teaching artist, apprenticeship programs, mentorship programs than there might have been before. And more common usage of the term teaching artist now, where even 10, 15 years ago, people were like, well, what do you mean by that? I think it is more commonly held than it was then. Still, there are tensions that exist that I just want to put on the table in the interest of full candor and preparing you to go out in the world. There's a tension within the K-12 school system between sometimes advocates for full-time credentialed arts teachers who work all day in schools as the dance teacher, the visual art teacher, music teacher, theater teacher. People who do that are heroes. That work is vital. And ultimately, our vision for arts education will only be achieved if all schools have access to arts teachers. That's how it was in the good old days. When I grew up in Los Angeles, we need to get back to that. It's hard to work around. We don't have a band teacher. We don't have a dance teacher. We don't have a theater teacher. So those roles are critical. Sometimes people in those roles feel anxious that teaching artists from a nonprofit are there to steal their jobs. That they feel like they're working so hard to keep the band program going. They constantly have to make the case. They have to have candy sales to get money to go to the music festival. They feel like their job is vulnerable. And now some sexy new thing walks in called a teaching artist, and they're part of some cool organization. And my principal might go with them because that program or partnership is probably less expensive to the school than a full-time salaried person with benefits. So some of that angst is there, and I think we can understand with empathy what might that feel like if you are the only art teacher in your school and suddenly everyone is excited about a partnership with somebody visiting from the outside. I believe strongly that the world needs both, and that our ultimate vision, sort of a three-legged triangle where you have full-time art teachers in schools, you have non-arts teachers learning how to better include and integrate the arts in what they do, because there's great power to that, and those art teachers and regular teachers are really being strategic in how do we use resources in our community, whether they're trips to a museum or visits from a teaching artist or field trip to see a show, to supplement and add to what we're doing, but that we're all on the same team working together. But there are sometimes this sort of tug of war over resources and priority. And then sort of arguments about quality, where the teachers in schools saying, I'm credentialed, I went to college, I earned my degree, I have a credential as a music teacher. They don't. And sometimes visiting artists saying, I'm a real artist, I have an album, I play with so-and-so, I'm in a symphony, I'm quality. People who teach in schools probably aren't quality. And I think that can be dangerous and divisive on either end. So I don't want to dwell on that, but I think we'd be naive to think none of that exists. Knock on the school door tomorrow, they'll open their arms and welcome you, and it will just go. So in school settings, I think it's an important, wherever you end up landing and doing that, whether you're working with a classroom teacher or an art teacher, whatever the mix is, I'm here to help. I'm here to add to what you do. I have enormous respect for what you do. How can I add value? How can I help strengthen what you're already trying to do? How can I be your partner and your ally, rather than marching in and saying, teacher, sit back, I'm going to put on my show, and then leave. So I want you just to be mindful of that. I don't want to overstate that it's a horrific thing. It does get under my skin when I see that kind of divisiveness. So a moment about quality, which at one level is subjective, obviously, and the issues in different art forms are different. But just to put some things to think about, what do we mean by quality if we're working as a teaching artist? So I think it starts with artistic excellence and credibility. You're the real deal. You've had the training, you've worked professionally, you have the credentials, the credits, the resume, and the sort of magic of being a real artist to walk into whatever setting and share that. These aren't really ranked, but maybe they are. Flexibility. Every setting is different. Every physical space is different. They said they had a piano, but it's actually really out of tune. They said they had a space for me, but kids are eating lunch there today, and we're going out on the playground. They said I was in the auditorium, but I'm in a classroom full of desks. Just the flexibility to say, great, we're going to make it work and put on a smile is just so essential, because all of that really happens. And if someone walks in as sort of like a diva attitude, like this isn't going to work, you're probably going to not last long as a teaching artist. And then understanding about being an educator, and there are best practices of being an educator. People spend their career learning about effective teaching and learning. That's not something we're going to distill into 10 seconds right now, but it's something to ask, what do I know, what do I don't know, where do I need to grow, where do I need to learn? Have I created lesson plans for a school setting? Am I up on that? One of the biggest mistakes new teaching artists make is to believe they can teach the history of Western music in 45 minutes to fourth graders. And they've planned it all out, and they have all of the stuff. And it's like, maybe introduce the idea of melody today would be a good lesson. Stop. And if you teach the idea of melody well, then that's success, and that allows you to move on, as opposed to, throwing everything in the kitchen sink in. So less is more, and this term of scaffolding. You need to know a little bit about A before you're going to understand B, C, and D. And we need to work sequentially to get there. This idea of assessing prior knowledge, to walk in a room and have ways, it's not a gut sense, there are ways and exercises to do that. How much do these kids or adults or teachers or whoever it is, what do they already know? And make sure that I'm meeting them where they are. They may be much more advanced than I was told, and I need to adjust accordingly. Or they don't know. I thought they had much more knowledge. They don't. Again, it's flexibility to meet people where they are. And then there's something called classroom management. Depending on the setting, not every learner is equally enthusiastic about your presentation, it turns out. So how do I deal with that? How do I make it work for everybody? There are a couple who are being disruptive. There are a couple with their heads down and are not really paying attention. And there's an art to doing that well, and that's something to be learned and studied, but really, really important. So I'm just going to push stop so it doesn't ding on me. To close this piece, and then I'm going to introduce a colleague of mine who will share an example, just to give you a sense of the last week at the Wallace in terms of my life here relevant to this conversation. Last week we did a partnership at the LA Museum of the Holocaust, where theater director Ann Noble was working with high school students who had interviewed 2 Holocaust survivors, heard their story, asked questions, learned their stories, and then were tasked with creating an original theater piece, about 15 minutes, to tell the story of these 2 survivors, which they performed in this room last week. So that's an amazing kind of work to meet. And these weren't all theater kids. They were more interested in the history than actors or theater kids. But how do you work with that group of kids to have them own these stories and then present something, which is just, I was incredibly proud in terms of what they presented. Next week, we're holding a week-long camp, musical theater camp with the Miracle Project that Elaine Hall is going to speak about in a moment. Young people 13 and up with autism and all abilities, as well as co-actors who are young people and adults without autism, learning and having great fun in musical theater, and they'll perform in this space next Friday morning, sort of some of the highlights of what they've learned. So that's a whole other kind of setting of working with young people with autism or any people who may have disabilities. And then next Thursday, I'm a little out of sequence, we're partnering this summer with Homeboy Industries downtown and a group called Vote Project, bringing teaching artists in music, dance, theater, mass, tableau, whole variety of things, twice a week to work with young, they're called trainees at Homeboys, mostly men, some young women, 15 to 25, have been formerly incarcerated or caught up in the juvenile justice system. And now this is about preparing them for life and for work and using the arts to give them skills and confidence. So they're going to be here next Thursday sharing what they've been doing this summer. So I share all that just to say that those are three things that we're doing here. We're just one organization, but the Holocaust Project, working with youth with autism or working with formerly gang members or gang-involved youth, are just, and there are 100 other examples, not that we do, but that are here in the world in LA. So just want you to stretch your mind about what this could be and what kind of setting children, youth, adults, resonate with you, again, on your personal mission and how you feel personally you want to make a difference in the world. Last two things, and then I'm going to introduce Elaine. Strong advice. Step one should not be, you're going to hear an incredible story, so this has nothing to do with anybody that you will hear today, and I apologize in advance. But step one is not to create a brand new nonprofit. Step one is to learn what already exists. We don't have everything in LA, but we really do have a lot. We're blessed with so many great programs and organizations. So it is so worth your time, and this Google thing is really useful. Who already works with older adults with dementia? Who already works with young people with autism? Who has programs to teach dance in K-12 schools? Who already works after school in South LA? Who already teaches film and media to young people? There's so much great things out there that if your real passion as an artist, I think it is usually wiser to affiliate and join with groups that are up and running, that figure that out, that you're there to share your artistry, than to start with sort of the burden and it is just a huge, audacious task to set up from scratch a whole brand new nonprofit, particularly if you're competing with somebody down the road who already does it well and would love to have you join that team and start teaching and being part of that program. So again, sometimes starting a nonprofit is fantastic. So everybody started somewhere. So I don't want to disparage anybody, but I meet so many people, they haven't taught. I want to make a difference with youth. I've decided to create my own nonprofit. It's going to be called Dance for a Better World, and I'm going to do it. Like, whoa. Maybe do your homework and see what already exists out there. So I'm going to stop there. I could go on and on and on and on and on. But thank you. And we can talk, we'll have a break for lunch, and happy to talk to folks afterwards more about what we're doing here at the Wallace. But speaking of what we're doing here at the Wallace, we are really thrilled to provide an artistic home for something called the Miracle Project. And Elaine is going to share that story, so I'm not going to share that story. Other than Elaine is such a remarkable person who was inspired by her personal experience and her personal story, which is fairly daunting, to do more than deal with the issues that she and her son are challenged with, but to make a difference in the world. And when I say world, the world of the Wallace, but she's involved internationally in sharing her approach and strategies to use the arts to make a profound difference in the lives of young people and young adults with autism. And not just from a sort of like therapeutic point of view, but don't they deserve great training? And don't they have incredible talents as singers, actors, dancers? And don't they have the same right that every kid has to be on TV, to be in film, to be on the stage? And the answer is they absolutely do. And she is such a powerful advocate and just embodies that value. So please join me in welcoming the founder and artistic director of the Miracle Project, Elaine Hall.
Hi. Can you see me? Can you hear me? I need Dr. Ruth's little stand, so I'm coming this way. Is this on? Okay. Thank you, Mark, for that beautiful introduction. I'm one of those that when you hear the name Mark Slavkin go, ah, and what a mensch. Whenever I have challenges or issues, I know that I can go to him and say, this is going on, and I get this wisdom, which is one of the things I want to chat about, is finding mentors. Always finding someone who knows a little bit or a lot of it more, because that's what's been my path and saving grace all along. And thank you, Joanne, for inviting me to be here. I know that I heard there might be 40 to 70 people, and look, this audience. And thank you to all of you for being here and being interested in this topic. And if you're not, hopefully you will be, because as a founder of an organization, which I agree with Mark, had I listened or known that 14 years ago, I probably wouldn't have started my own nonprofit, but fortunately I did, and things have, fortunately we've landed at the Wallace, because in a venue such as this, we really get the opportunity to be around Mark, around professional actors, singers, dancers, lighting designers who inspire all of us all the time. And I get to meet you. So a little bit about my story. I was a TV and film acting coach. I worked in all the big studios. I was sort of the A-list acting coach. And I also, prior to that, I taught dance and theater and around town, and used theater to develop self-esteem and self-consciousness. Prior to that, I was a professional dancer and actress, but I found my passion being behind the scenes, behind the camera, and I was working quite a bit. I'm quite successful as a TV and film acting coach. And but what I wanted more than anything was a child of my own. It was nice being called Coach E, which was my name, but what I wanted to be called was Mama. And the universe had a different plan for me. I was not able to give birth biologically. So I adopted a little boy from an orphanage in Russia. My heritage is Russian, so I thought if I can't carry on my grandfather's eyes, I can carry on his country. And I brought this beautiful little boy, 2-year-old boy, home with me, and he spun around in circles and stared at his hand for hours at a time, and after a while started banging his head and tantruming, and all I knew was that I wanted this was my child. And this was 22 years ago. Today, if I say things like he stared at his hand and spun around in circles and banged his head, what would he be called? But 22 years ago, only some of you would have had that answer, and I definitely did not. All I knew was, this is my son, and we're going to make this work. We're going to bond. We're going to connect. And the only way, being a creative type, I knew how to connect, because I'd been teaching pretty much my whole life, was through the arts. So when he would spin in circles, what do you think I did? Yeah, we'd make it ring around the rosies. And if he would start banging things, I'd get out, my music background, I'd get out pots and pans, and we'd be banging all around together. And whenever we did that, we'd connect. what does any mom want but to connect to their child, right? So traditional, after a while, we got the diagnosis, the big A word, and people were telling me send him back to Russia, and and I'm like, he's my son, or put him in an institution, and he just came from an institution. So I started learning everything I could about the A word, about autism, and I trained with some of the best people around the country, and they encouraged me to keep doing what I was doing. Because when I would join the autistic world, we'd connect. In Los Angeles, the traditional therapists that we started going to thought that I was crazy. They said I was enabling his autism, that he wasn't going to get any better, and they brought me to these programs where they would give him an M&M if he would sit, and things like that. And especially for a child that didn't have enough food, you give an M&M or you take away an M&M, that causes tremendous anxiety. For me too. It would cause me if somebody took my M&M away from me. So I just started going to my creative people. I came to you. And I said, look, when I do this with my son, he's connecting. And I can't do this all day long because by this time my husband had left because I was entering this crazy autistic world, and my house was kind of a training ground for autism. But creative people don't have to think outside the box. We don't even know there is a box. Right? So I went to you and I said, look, help me. I'm going to train you in every single thing that I'm learning about autism. I'll do the traveling, I'll do learning, but then I'm going to synthesize it, and I want your creativity. I want you to help me. So I had professional dancers where I trained them in what's now called the Inclusion from Within, 7 Keys to Unlock Autism. I trained them in everything I was learning and synthesized the professional autistic world into a creative methodology. And I trained my dancer friends, and I trained my actor friends, and I started doing trades with actors and said, okay, look, you work with my son 6 hours a week, I will train you to get auditions. And it worked, And we had this fabulous laboratory with my son, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, joining his autistic world. And inch by inch by inch, he started to emerge out of isolation, connecting, being present, not just with me, but with everybody. And there's story after story of what happened. This is not shameless promotion. It's just, I do have a book that tells how this happened, and I want to gift it to you, Joanne, in case anybody wants to borrow it. It's called Now I See the Moon, and it shows this progression of how creative artists were able to reach a seemingly unreachable child. It worked. It worked. Now, I want to tell you, I didn't cure him of autism. I cured me of wanting normal. But what we did together is, my son is this happy, funny, creative, dynamic young man. He's 24. He works in an organic garden. He takes classes here at the Wallace. He types to communicate and uses his iPhone. He presented at the United Nations, and he has just received an award in Washington, D.C. from the National Autism Society for inspiration and leadership. Thank you. Proud mama. And it's because of you. Seriously, if I didn't have these creative artists, creative people that learned about autism and were willing to do something that other people call impossible, he wouldn't be where he is. So cut to when he was about 7 years old, he started coming out of his shell. He was ready to go back to school with an aide, and I needed a job. No spousal support. So a friend told me about a grant from Jewish Community Foundation, and I, beginner's luck, wrote the grant. She told me to do a theater program for kids of all abilities. And I really didn't want to do it, but I needed the work. And I really just channeled, what do I need for my son? I need community. I need a place where he's not included, but he belongs. I needed neurotypical, non-disabled peers to see what's so awesome about my son, because I got it. And I needed a place where me as a parent could talk to another parent and not hear all the depressing stories about autism in the school system. I needed a place where we could celebrate. So all the things I needed, I channeled into a grant, and beginner's luck, I got it, and started with what's now known as the Miracle Project. What the Miracle Project is an expressive and performing arts program. We use music, dance, drama, visual art, film, to bring out the often unheard voices of individuals with autism and all abilities. And we have mentors, we have you, who become co-actors. And we have teens who believe that they're going to be making a difference, and they come to volunteer to change the lives of people with autism. But guess what happens? Our lives are changed. And often, people who are in the entertainment, creative business, artistic business, their lives, I've known many people, don't worry, it may not happen to you, but their careers change. And they're done with auditioning, and they become our teachers of tomorrow. One of my, someone who started out as a volunteer once a week is now one of our master teachers, and she continues her own artistic pursuits, and she has a film that's coming out on tomorrow called Following Molly. There was a documentary done on the Miracle Project called Autism the Musical. And yeah, you heard of it? That was me. And and it actually ended up winning 2 Emmys, and has, as Mark said, brought me around the world presenting on this topic. And we have people who volunteer for us who then become part of our team. I'm always looking to hire actors, musicians, filmmakers. As Mark said, a number of our young teens and young adults who started out literally too shy to even walk through a door with a room full of their peers have now performed in front of thousands with Jack Black, Stephen Stills. My son's been on stage with Conan O'Brien. I took one student who, she wasn't talking, but we noticed that she could sing. And one day, as she says, opera came out of her throat. And she's now singing opera. I took her to China with me, and she entertained 400 medical professionals, and what's possible. So now we have now we're at the Wallace, we have original musicals that we're performing, and I'm gonna show you a little clip. And before I do, I want to invite you to take our flyer and call me, email me, because we need you. Our program's growing, and we really need you. It can be a career, it can be a passion, it can be a hobby. We pay. We also have volunteers, but we need you. So I'm going to show a little clip, and then please talk to me afterwards.
Sue's Joe Kwan got a peek at one of the group's dress rehearsals.
Trying to be somebody else.
Many of the young people you see on stage here were diagnosed with autism, including Michael Anthony Greenfield.
Autism doesn't stop me.
The 15-year-old high school freshman says joining the Miracle Project, the nonprofit behind the play, helped him find the confidence to be on stage.
I want to show people that I'm an autistic actor that can do pretty much anything.
Elaine Hall founded the Theater, Film, and Expressive Arts program 14 years ago.
I actually have a son with severe autism.
Her goal? To show kids and adults like her son
that the sky is the limit.
Something Hunter Trost, who was diagnosed with Asperger's, says he realized after joining.
Really helped me, just find the faith that I need to kind of go out there and just be who I am.
His mom says seeing her son on stage like this is overwhelming.
Expressing himself in a way that I wasn't ever really sure he would do.
The upcoming play is called 185 Wilshire, a love story about young people with autism and other disabilities looking for love, learning to trust, and establishing independence.
The group is having their dress rehearsal right here on stage at Beverly Hills High School. They sound amazing, but the play debuts this Friday at the Wallace with performances through Sunday.
I'm in awe of every single one of the students.
In Beverly Hills, Joe Kwan, KCAL 9 News.
Oh, they all sound so good together, don't they? And be sure to check out Stephanie's Day, June 9th, right here on the CBS lot in Studio City. The Resource Fair is a special day for children and youth with special needs. The annual event runs from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m.
Oh, these are for you. Thank you. Oh my God, I love books. Thank you. I need tissues is what I need. So I just want to introduce the panel. And wasn't she fabulous? I mean, just... You know, when people want to do this kind of work, it's got to come from that kind of place, you know, to really succeed. I'm sure of it, and you're going to find more about that as we move forward here. So I would like to introduce our panel. I'll start it with our moderator for our arts education panel, Karen Lewis, Deputy Director. Have a seat. Ashley Wilkerson, Artistic Manager. Bunny Hall, Founder and Executive Director of Dream a World Education. And Stephen McCarthy, who is really amazing, as is everybody, from LAUSD. Oh, right. Gotcha.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to present this panel of esteemed professionals who have been exactly where you are and do amazing work in the community here in Los Angeles. For those of you who have not heard of Arts for LA before, we are your arts advocacy organization in Los Angeles. We're the voice for the arts that works to really organize our community and serve resources to you. So if you go out in the lobby afterwards, you'll see a lot of different pamphlets and resource materials. Please take some and be in touch and check out our website. It's a bevy of resources for you. I am thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to serve as your moderator today to this wonderful panel of experts who have been at the center of providing and expanding arts education and the teaching artist experience. I know you will find their insight and experience useful as you navigate your own careers and your own path into becoming a teaching artist or expanding your teaching artist expanse. First, I'd like to introduce Bunny Hull. She's Executive Director and founder of Dream a World Education, which approaches artistic learning on a global level with programs that teach children to better understand the world and the universal principles that join us as a global family. All innovation begins with creativity. I love that. After our panel, we'll see the screening of The Ripple Effect, which she produced, wrote, and directed, and is also an official selection of the Global Impact Film Festival, which will take place on August 25th in Washington, D.C. So thank you, Bunny, for being with us today. Next, we have Ashley Wilkerson, who is the artistic manager of the Gabriella Foundation. The Gabriella Foundation hosts 2 charter schools and the Everybody Dance program, which brings high-quality dance and artistic skills to over 4,000 students across the region, many of them, most of them, in underserved neighborhoods. It's an incredible program. If you have not looked into the Gabriella program, do so. It's incredible. They do beautiful work. Ashley herself is an acclaimed dancer and has been both a teaching artist with Gabriella Foundation as well as the artistic manager. So welcome. And finally, the man who saved the day, Stephen McCarthy. We are so lucky to have Stephen here. He is the director of the Arts Education Branch at LAUSD. And he is also an adjunct professor at USC at the Rossier School of Education. And something that this entire panel has in common is he is also a theater person. He has a background in the arts as well. So welcome, Stephen. Thank you for being here. I should say Dr. McCarthy. Before we get started, I want to give you a little sense of where we are in our region in Los Angeles right now. Mark touched upon it a bit with the creative economy. We live in one of the most creative cities in the world, which, yes. Currently, the creative economy of California produces an economic output of $407 billion. And $198 billion of those dollars are located right here in Los Angeles. And this is according to the 2018 Otis report. 1.6 million jobs have been generated within the creative economy in California, with over 457,000 of those in Los Angeles, which means about 1 in 6 jobs out here are rooted in the creative economy. And these metrics are a clear example of how critical the industry is, and that our education system demands that we are educating our students fully with consecutive and strategic arts programming for every student. And a whole education is vital to ensure that our students today are capable and ready to build tomorrow's workforce, and you are at the center of that. So thank you for bringing your talents. Thank you for bringing your skills to the classroom. You are so necessary, and you are so honored by our students and by the teachers you work with. So thank you. Right now, we're in a really interesting and exciting place when it comes to arts education in Los Angeles. We recognize that as parents, as teachers, as artists, as citizens, that we have a long way to go, but in the past few years, we've seen some really significant and promising changes at the city, county, and state level. I won't talk about federal level right now. Please disregard my face when I make that face. At the city level, we found that the DCA was passed a budget that is the largest one in 19 years. That's huge. We've also seen a marked advancement and commitment to whole child education in LAUSD, thank you, Stephen, through the Arts Education Branch and the creation of the Arts Equity Index in 2015, which really let us see where our problems laid. And we were able to finally identify the advances that we needed to make in order to include every child with the education they deserve. In 2016, Senate Bill 916 was passed in California, which adds dance and theater as authorized subjects that are eligible for credentialing. This is a game changer for us. Yeah, and definitely applause for that, because how it used to be was if you were an artist, a dance teacher, or a dancer, theater background, which is my background, and you wanted to teach in the classroom, you had to get credentialed in some other subject, physical education, English, and that was the path of many of us. And that took you out of your career for a minute to study something else, to apply somewhere else, so you can bring your career back here. And it was just a circular pattern that didn't make sense. Now we're in a position where we can actually get credentialed for the subjects that we teach. And that's amazing, and that's incredible, and yay. The next piece is the LA County Board of Supervisors. They have been truly committed to equity and inclusion, first with the adoption of the Cultural Equity and Inclusion Initiative in 2017. Then in April of 2018, they unanimously adopted a Student Bill of Rights to include arts education for every child in every school in every classroom. Then, in May of 2018, they, again, unanimously voted for the LA Arts Commission to become a full department of the County of Los Angeles. This puts arts and culture in the same focus as the health department and the sheriff's department. So we're in a really exciting time, and we're just starting it. Now we're at this point where systemically things are coming to a head that we can build upon, and that's a really exciting place to be. Los Angeles seems to have really be waking up to the critical need and value of arts education for every student. And as I turn to the panel now, I'd like to get a sense of where you started. What was that moment for you that you recognized the value, the power, and the need for arts education for every child? And Bunny, I'd like to start with you on this one.
Well, it began for me as a teaching artist, and it was my first entry into the world of education as a teaching artist when I was invited to teach a residency program at Rosemont Elementary, which is where I met who is now a principal at one of our schools. It was the first time that I got to see the power of the arts in a public education setting from the inside out. I got to develop my own curriculum. I realized the population that we were working with, that many at that time were not getting the arts, and the gift that I was given to be able to express my talents as a songwriter and teaching a greater universal message, which was the power of dreams that we used. And that was the thing that got me. And once I was gotten, it never left me. And that, a nonprofit later, here I sit, as Mark said, I probably wouldn't have started mine either had I known the difference, but I just let my passion keep taking me. I followed my bliss, and one thing led to another. That was back in 1999.
Excellent, thank you. Stephen, same question.
Well, same question. Well, I am the product of two immigrants. My mother is from Italy, my father is from Ireland. So I'm going way back before 1999. But I was living in, back east when we came from the old country. We settled in areas that were for us, and we didn't go beyond. So there I was in an all-Italian neighborhood. My father was allowed to live in the neighborhood, by the way. The priest just said, you should go to the Irish church, though. And I literally had nuns as teachers. Yes, they hit, they everything. And I remember them, seriously, I'm not making fun, yes I am. They said, okay, we're now gonna learn the English. And I thought, you had an 8 everything, and then it's, and so that was my early background. But my cousin had been an actor, and he was called back for the touring company of The Sound of Music as Rolf. And I went with him to the callback, and he was up there singing, and I didn't like where I was sitting with my aunt, so I moved down next to the director and said, that's my cousin, he sings good, but today is a little flat. And the director said, are you an actor? I said, absolutely. And he said, can I hear you sing? And I went up there, and I sang the worst rendition of, okay, Summertime. I was horrible. But he hired me, and I went on tour. And I saw how it helped me. And so my whole life, I've been dedicated to working with children who were just like me, who needed that. And that's what I'm dedicated to today. And I was a child actor. You'll see me on Nick at Night. I was on Maude and all those other controversial shows back in the early days. That's my story.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, Ashley, your turn.
I think the moment that I really, truly realized how important it was for all schools goes back to my very first year as a teaching artist. I've always been a believer that, in a world that's kind of constantly taking us away from our humanity and going in a direction of technology, I believe that the arts really bring us back to the human experience and kind of basic human skills, if that makes sense. But I think my first year as a teaching artist, which was by far my most challenging year as a teaching artist in schools, really kind of pushed those boundaries because, as I'm sure many of us know, I was faced with, encountering students for the first time who really didn't want to be in a dance class. I was used to teaching in a studio environment where, for the most part, it's an elective-based thing, and then teaching in the school environment where an entire class is just brought to a dance classroom and made to take a dance class. I found myself having to convince many individuals of why they should participate in dance class, and I think in convincing them, I came up with this whole list of reasons of why arts education is so important. And I had to be like, well, there's the physical fitness aspect of it, there's the stretching, there's the physical awareness aspect of it. And I had to have this whole like grocery list of like, this is what it does for you. It brings you basic creativity skills, which can be applied in any field and which are essentially critical thinking skills. I think dance in particular, but all performance arts and many arts in general really have a great ability to reach many different kinds of learners because they have the auditory aspect, the kinesthetic aspect, the visual aspect. In our organization, we usually encourage teaching artists to utilize a whiteboard in a dance class, so there's also a written aspect to it. And I think what's truly important and what I really saw in convincing those students to finally participate is that like the student that you would least expect, who had sometimes been labeled as like the naughty kid in the regular classroom, sometimes like excelled in dance class, and they might have given you a little pushback at first because they were the rebellious naughty kid, but once you got them up and moving, they were like, oh, this actually really resonates with me. So it's that student at the end of the year that really didn't want to dance at the beginning of the year who ends up being front and center by the end of the year.
The naughty kid is always my favorite.
Me too.
Always. Because they always become the most powerful leader once you have them engaged. And it's amazing to see that transformation. I want to stay with you for this next question. You talked about being a teaching artist within the classroom. What do you see the role of the teaching artist to be right now? And where do you see it in 5 years? Where would you like to see it in 10 years?
I think right now our teaching artists really focus on establishing a relationship with the school. I focus mostly on our daytime program, which is our partnerships with schools where we go in and we're like an elective that the students have pretty much once a week. And so right now we're really trying to establish relationships with the schools where we can collaborate. And we really encourage our teaching artists to do arts integration units with what I'm going to call the classroom teacher, like the homeroom teacher, and establish that connection so that we can take their classroom learning into the dance class and kind of delve into that knowledge a little bit more and show how the arts can be useful in an academic environment as well as a creative environment. And I would love in the future to get classroom teachers to be a little more involved. And the most successful dance classes that we have by far are the ones where the classroom teacher is really enthusiastic, really supportive, is up and active. The students love it when their like regular teacher is like up stretching with them in the background, and like it's the best. And the kids get super excited about it and super enthusiastic about it. And then those teachers sometimes will like have extra rehearsals, or they'll come up with creative ways to integrate dance into their regular classroom a little bit more. And so it's just creating this kind of crossover, which I think is really great. And I would love to see more of that happening. I would love to see even more enthusiasm and understanding from academic teachers about just how arts can create that kind of depth of knowledge in students.
Excellent, thank you. Bunny, same question. What do you see the role of the teaching artist to be today, and where would you like to see it go?
Well, I think Ashley hit on it. It's collaboration, and it's about going into the classroom, working with the classroom teacher, and creating a symbiotic relationship, looking at their curriculum and seeing how you can expound upon that, how you can work within that with what you're teaching. We have as an organization, we have a curriculum that's set that we take in, and we have a professional development with teachers prior to that, and we look to develop an ongoing relationship with a school so that we're there over a period of years, and that we are able to expand upon what we're doing each year with those same teachers, not only the teachers that we're working with, but the teachers in other classrooms and other grade levels, because we start in kindergarten, we follow children to second grade. But we're interested in finding out how we can share useful tools with classes who may not have arts, or may have different forms of arts than we have, so that we can create sort of a ripple effect into the school as a whole and help and allow the arts to help change school culture. And how I see that expanding is is looking forward to being in a school a length of time where we can really make a difference in that school culture, because it doesn't happen in a year or 2 years. It happens over a period of time. So it's really just, how can we continue to serve those schools in a greater way, in a more consistent way?
Excellent, thank you. Stephen, I want to take that question, but I want to change it a little bit, particularly with the LAUSD viewpoint on it. Now that we have a credentialing program for theater artists and dance artists, how does that affect the classroom? What do you see the role of the credentialed artist as well as the teaching artist who is not credentialed in the classroom right now versus in the future?
Okay, first off, the theater and dance credential, while it has been approved, we're not going to see it happening until, was it 2020 or 2021?
Yep.
Okay. So still today, if you want to teach theater, you have to get an English credential. And if you want to teach dance, you have to get a PE credential if you were going into the classroom right today. One thing that you may want to think about if you want to be a theater teacher, because this is what I had to do a long time ago, I actually spoke to my college and I asked about some of the theater literature classes that I took, and found that there were equivalents in the English department, and was able to get them to assist with my transcripts to identify that I had taken enough English classes so that I could get an English credential to teach theater full-time. Sort of backwards planning, but yeah, that's what happened. But so that will happen. As many of you know, because I've worked with so many of you over the years, when I was a teacher, I felt that I could not do my job without the arts partners, because I was the only theater teacher on a campus, and I assumed my job was to teach every child on the whole campus about theater, and I was only one person. So therefore, I mean, one of the first people that I remember reaching out to was the music center where Mark was there. And I brought in all kinds of arts partners, and I collaborated with the social studies department, et cetera, to make sure that everybody knew about theater. Because when I first arrived, the culture was that I hung my theater masks on the wall, and I was told, oh, you can't hang those because that's play now, cry later, gang symbol. And I thought, what are you talking about? I have a tattoo on my leg of this. I didn't understand that. So I thought, well, I'm not taking it down. I'm going to help educate the children. This is way beyond this. So we did, and I never took those down, by the way. I think I super glued them before I left, so they're probably still on the wall. So I needed those teaching artists, you teaching artists, and those, that it sounds terrible to refer to them as other. I did hear Mark when he talked about that three-legged stool where the arts partner, the generalist teacher, and the credential teacher were extremely important in this whole thing. Because LAUSD is a union-based operation, we depend very heavily on our credentialed teachers. I myself supervise 258 itinerant elementary teachers that service all of our schools. In the past, the principals have been allowed to elect what art form do you want, and I've tried to do my best to match. A few years back, I think 3 years back, the board members challenged me to find a way to have the kids have all the art forms. So now in 78 of our elementary schools, I actually have a program called the Creative Network, where every child in the school gets all 4 art forms for 9 weeks. So it's a rotation. But I send the same teachers back. Just as Bunny was mentioning the importance of consistency, I try to send those same teachers back. So the kindergarten kids meet the theater teacher. They know they're going to see that same theater teacher next year. They also collaborate with their instruction so that they're using common vocabulary and they know what the other teacher has taught, so that there's consistency. So when we talk about rhythm, we talk about rhythm of a painting as well, or the rhythm of a play, or the rhythm of music, or the rhythm of dance. So we try to use that general, the academic vocabulary, so it's important. We have our arts partnership now, so and many of you I know, I can see are a member of the Arts Partnership Program, where we did an RFP. That was to help you as help us. Because, you know, getting through the bureaucracy of LAUSD is sometimes challenging, if you didn't know that. And the reason for doing the RFP is because I was able to establish a bench contract where I had done all the insurance stuff, et cetera, with you, so then you could service any school. We do fund Arts Partners to be in our lowest performing schools. However, because if you're on the bench, you could also go to a school who is able to pay themselves. And because I've cleared you, you don't have to go through all that red tape. They file the paperwork and everything and use the contract I've already created with you on the bench. So it makes it easier. Because no matter how union-based we are, no matter how many arts teachers we have, we can never, ever do what is necessary to reach every child. So we do need the arts partners, and I'm a strong advocate of arts partners, and I'm also a strong advocate of assisting any arts partner that ever wants to look at getting a credential. I'm really a good person to contact because you can contact me directly. My number's on the website, and I really do answer my own phone. You don't have to go through other people to get to me. Because if you are looking to make that transition, not that I'm saying it's necessary, but if you do decide you want to do that, I can assist you. The last thing I want to say is arts integration, which I heard you talking about. Extremely passionate. That's actually what I teach in the School of Rossier at USC. And our division has become very passionate about arts integration. And just this past year, we actually we offered instruction in arts integration to nearly 5,000 teachers. We do 4-day trainings where they come and they spend a whole day in theater, a whole day in music, dance, and visual arts. That was so successful that we went to a level 2 and now we're developing a level 3. They're coming back because they're seeing that our generalist teachers, so our non-arts teachers, are seeing that not only are we good because we teach arts, but what we teach, the skills we teach, and the passion that the children see, they see the children with the passion in our classrooms, they could offer the same thing in their classrooms by using our techniques, the techniques you use. The math teacher would say to me when I was a theater teacher, so you are lucky, you teach a fun subject. And I said, well, you know, at one point you must have liked math in order to want to teach it. So, you know, we try to reinvigorate and we show, okay, sometimes if a kid can't answer a word problem, it may be because they can't visualize what's going on. So move the desks, let's act it out. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, this is what we're being asked to do. So it's important. So what I see with the arts partners, we did the RFP process 2 years in a row. We didn't do it this year mainly because, as you know, Roy Pullins has retired, the executive director of the arts branch, and I'm now in charge once again. And just because I've got so much going on, I didn't do the RFP again this year to bring on more arts partners, but I fully intend to do it for 1920 in the fall so that it will be open so that more arts partners can join our ranks. That's very important to me. And we're talking about film, media arts, theater, dance, every form of dance, music. We need it all. And our children will identify differently with what you're offering, and we could almost custom tailor and help you find the schools that are best for you. And we do work with, again, many of you already, and I thank you for your services. So in 5 years, I would love to see, I think we have 78 arts partners on our bench. I think that's rather low. I'd like to see it double, maybe even triple within 5 years. And I'll still be there, don't worry.
We won't let you go. Thank you, Stephen. So we know the power that the arts bring to the student in the classroom, but there's also the power that the student brings to the teaching artist in the classroom too, and that's what I really want to focus on for the next question. You as teaching artists, the classroom is a creative classroom when you enter it. So I want to turn this question to Bunny. What do you see the role of the active classroom, the creative classroom, to be for the teaching artist today, and where would you like to see it in 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, I look at the classroom like a laboratory for arts. You know, it's a safe space in which children can explore their identity, where they can discover who they are, where they can reach into their humanity and discover what humanity is, especially because we start with such young ones. And I mean, it goes back to collaboration again. It's creating that collaborative effort with the classroom teacher where they begin to understand, because not all classroom teachers are used to the arts or know the power of the arts. So it's about establishing that connection with them and inspiring them as they inspire you, because the children are always inspiring you. They're always pushing you where you need to go, from that problem child that you talked about to the child who pops up with some special skill that you never imagined could happen. So, you know, they're like little lab rats, all those children. They're really creating that energy and that synergy in the classroom with that classroom teacher, and always including the classroom teacher as part of the project or part of whatever's going on, so that they feel that change that's beginning to happen. The second part of your question was?
Where do you see 5 to 10 years from now?
Well, as an organization, I guess as I look at through the eye of an organization, I hope to see that organizations like ours can really become a fixture within the school, that we are there for many years, so that we have that consistency that we're talking about, and we have that personal relationship with the teachers, because they, it becomes one big family after a while. Like Esperanza Elementary, which you'll see in the film, that's like a family to us, from the administration to the teachers. And it's not a mistake, that they, in kindergarten, they have high foundational reading skills, and that they have great collaboration, and also that they have high participation with parents at that school. So it's really all a part. It starts in the classroom.
Excellent, thank you. I know Gabriella Foundation does a really fantastic job of offering sequential dance education to students, which is so important for those of you who are dancers. You know this, that when you're training your body, you can't just start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. And Gabriella Foundation does an incredible job of bringing that sequential training to the neighborhoods. And you yourself have been a teaching artist with Gabriella Foundation for many years. So same question to you. What do you see the role of the active classroom? How have the students affected you as an artist when you have been in that classroom?
Well, I think most teachers and teaching artists would say that, you learn as much from the students as you teach to them. And I think I just get the biggest kick out of the students that I teach. I just think they're really funny and really fun, and sometimes often like human beings in their most like basic human form. They just say what they feel sometimes, and I love the open-heartedness of young students who are just really willing to like please their teacher, and then I love the kind of sassiness that middle schoolers have. And I think it can be really fun, and I feel like I learn a lot about interacting with people, as well as like different forms of creativity. I always like to do activities with the students where they get to show a little bit of their personalities and their creativity, and it takes a minute to crack their shell and get them out of their box if they're not used to having dance class. But once you get them to like really feel the bravery to think creatively, you get to see some really interesting things that are going on in their imaginations. And we often talk about, your imagination doesn't look like my imagination, so what you do is going to be totally different from what I do. And I really like seeing what's going on in their imaginations. And I think as far as, a couple years from now, going back to what Bunny was saying, I think more blurred lines between, I don't like the fact that, academic learning and arts learning are considered separate. I'd like to see them as like fundamental to each other.
It's a core value for a whole education, absolutely. Stephen, same question.
Well, in 2012, LAUSD did vote with the help of Nuri Martinez, a former board member, to actually state that the arts are core. And, you know, I'm a strong personality, in case you haven't noticed. So sitting on in the division of instruction, like, you know, I think I invented the Me Too thing, because when social studies and science and everyone are included in something, what about us? What about us? And you know, I've been down there a long time. I went down on a temporary assignment 16 years ago. Okay, it was supposed to be 6 weeks, and I'm still there. And I think I'm a little intimidating to a lot of people down there, in that I always say, what about the arts? And that's very important. It is very important, because I don't even like to separate, say, academic and creative. We're all instructional, and we're important. So everything we do, I have my nose in it down there. I sit, you know, it's cool that I actually get to sit at the table of all instructional decisions now with the district. There was a time that wouldn't have happened. You know, we were the afterthought, but we're not an afterthought anymore. Every time we bring anything to our board, it's 100% unanimously passed for the arts, which is really important, no matter who's on that board. So we've seen changes over the years. Our current superintendent, Mr. Buechner, you know, he wasn't there a week when I met with him, and he talked about his love of instrumental music and how he grew up as an instrumentalist, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought, okay, take advantage of this direction right now, because that's usually an art form that, because of the expense, it's harder for me to push it as much as I'd like to. But as long as I have somebody there who was an instrumentalist, let's push that for now while I grow everything else. You're lucky to be at Esperanza, phenomenal school. And again, this is a perfect example of the leadership. And because I do have direct access to those principals, I do talk to them one-on-one, I hear the concerns and how can I help fix it. They are actually one of our creative network schools now, so that's really cool. So in addition to what you're providing, we're providing, it's very important. And every school district is very political. Ours, a little bit more because of our size. But I think having an inside advocate to help you, as well as our credentialed teachers, is very, very important. And I've learned over the years how to navigate everything. And I know the people in legal, I know the people in procurement, in HR, et cetera. So I'm able to push things through a little faster than maybe somebody who was newer. So I think LAUSD is in a very good position right now. And whereas I always joke and say I'm ready to retire, and I quit almost every other day, in case you don't.
You're not allowed to.
I just quit. And I go get my bag, and then I sit down and continue to work again. But I'm going to stay there. It's very important. I'm very passionate about what we're doing, and I say the collective we. I really do appreciate what you bring to our students, and I value it. And if you are working in our schools, if I don't know you especially, please send me an email or something to let me know who you are, so that I could come see what you're doing. So that if I can't come, I have a phenomenal team of 8 people. 8. I can't believe it. I have 8 people that work with me and go out to the schools, et cetera, that I could send somebody who maybe they are the specialist in dance or music that could actually go and bring me knowledge. But I do like to see firsthand myself. I do like to know who you are, so that when I hear about you, I can relate back to you. And I am here to support you. Please know that.
Thank you. You get applause every time. You get applause every time.
I usually get a standing ovation, but we'll wait to the end.
We're working toward that.
We'll wait to the end.
Okay, I'll let this be your question for the standing ovation. So, Stephen, you mentioned some of the concerns that you have too. What are the things that keep you up at night? What are the concerns, the pitfalls, the challenges you see ahead?
You know, she sent me that question and I laughed hysterically. I am so darn tired at the end of the night. Nothing keeps me up at night. Nothing. I'm there by 6 a.m. and sometimes I don't leave till 8:30, and that's my typical day. And today, I'm here, but as they've said, I was actually booked for another engagement, which I came from, and I'm going back to it. So I'm working 6-7 days. I absolutely love it. I'm actually very comfortable right now because I believe we're going to continue to succeed. I got through 2008. That was a terrible, terrible time in the history of education. Whereas every single school district across this country was shutting down the programs, okay? They were shutting down. And unfortunately, a former superintendent, I won't say who it was, but I was present in the room. You can look back on the timeline. And that superintendent wasn't very kind when he said, the cookie jar is closed. And I remember he said that to a group of my arts partners. And I was present and I wanted to just crawl under a chair or something because I was embarrassed for having he said that. But also, I ended up having to lay off 50% of my arts teachers in the district. But we didn't shut the arts program down. And that was the year that when I first went down to the arts branch, there were 28 of us working in the arts branch. We were cut to 14 a few years later, and then we were cut to 7, and then in 2008, it was me. I was the arts education branch. And I was laying everybody off, and it was like devastating, but I stood my ground, and I wouldn't pack, and we just kept going. And then slowly I was able to rebuild it. And I'm so proud to say that we have our Arts Community Network back. We are back to the teaching numbers we had. So many of my friends across the country, again, the districts shut down the arts program. And it was almost as bad as Proposition 13 in the 70s. But we survived it, and it was because of my supportive board. They didn't let us go because they knew if we totally shut it down, we'd never get it back. So we had to keep it at some level. And seriously, because of the deep cuts we made, I was laying off visual arts teachers that had 14 years experience in the district. Okay, 14 years. Music went up to 9 years. Okay, because theater was under English and dance was under PE, they were mostly saved, okay? That's why when we created this new credential, I thought, well, think back to 2008, what would have happened? So I was able to save people, but we did. We went forward, and I'm very proud of where we are today. So I don't stay up at night because I know we keep moving. And you can tell, I laugh at everything. Life is funny. My whole life, when you read my memoirs, it's going to be called Meanwhile, because think about this. This is happening, and then the camera shifts. And over here, this is Meanwhile, on this, and that's what I live my whole life by. And I need to remain optimistic during all of this. Because when I get called up to speak to the board, when everyone else goes, they look like the Scarecrow with the Wizard of Oz going up there. When I go up, I go, hi everyone, and they're waving at me and everything. And so it's got to be good from there. What are they going to do right? So that's important. And I remember their birthdays and I send them a little gift, etc. And it's important. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Now, we are so, there's your standing ovation. Now, running a nonprofit is a very different situation. So, Bonnie, same question to you. What keeps you up at night? What are your concerns? What are your challenges, frustrations, pitfalls?
Well, first I have to add, our organization started in 2008. So, talk about persistence. I mean, we started at absolutely the worst time that we could begin. It was the worst year. And, but as any nonprofit, probably funding is the thing that keeps me up. Well, I try to not let it keep me up at night, but sometimes it does. And if not for my board president, Diane Cabot, and Leslie Friedman, our director of philanthropy, that are here, I probably wouldn't sleep at all. But that is the thing that keeps me up. The other challenge that we have, and I can ask you about this, because it's been meeting schools. It's been finding the schools and the school principals in some of the worst areas that need it the most, and actually being able to connect with those people, because every school principal is overwhelmed and it's very difficult to get their attention. So, I mean, we've done it. It's been all mostly word of mouth. We have not become an arts partner. However, we were at one time. We were accepted as a professional development program, as an arts professional development program, but unfortunately, we were not allowed to film and photograph our programs, so we could not accept that position. So, but because we work school by school, we are allowed to work that out. But one of the challenges we have is finding the schools that need it the most and being able to talk with those principals, being able to present our program. The creation of this documentary, The Ripple Effect, has been an important thing for us, because it's allowed us to develop, like we've been able to meet with groups of principals in districts, in different districts, and show principals in 23 minutes what we do that speaks more about what we do than I can say in words. Those are the two most difficult things, I would say, that I have to deal with on a daily basis.
Excellent, thank you. Ashley, what about you?
I think that one of the biggest challenges that our teaching artists face has to do with, of course, lack of funding and lack of just bodies in general, like lack of woman power, lack of manpower to really give the follow through on the individual students. I think that it's the individual student issues that maybe there's no follow up on them. Maybe there's like a student who really needs an aid, but for some reason, there's not enough funding in the school to have aids for all the students, so it's just the ones who really need them. Things like that, I think, are the biggest worries for me, because I get concerned that there are these students who kind of slip through the cracks and who kind of accidentally learn that their actions don't have consequences, or that nobody's really following up on them or looking after them or making sure, holding them accountable. And I get concerned about, when our teaching artists come to me and say, like, I'm really struggling with this one student. I think there might be something going on, but there's nobody else who's there to like help with the student. The classroom teacher doesn't know what to do with the student either. That's usually our biggest problem, is these maybe like behavior issues, or sometimes not even behavior issues, but just something that comes up that presents a challenge to the teaching artist in the classroom. And sometimes there's just not enough funding or not enough people to really see those situations through. And I get really concerned about the students who slip through the cracks with those.
Absolutely. Thank you. Excellent. Applause. See, it's not just you, Stephen. I know. I'm teasing. So then the other side of that question, because I always like to flip questions, what gets you up in the morning? What are the things that really make you proud of what you're doing, make you excited to be there, really engage you as the teaching artist, as the educator, as the person in the classroom? What moves you? What motivates you? Let's start with Ashley again.
Of course, it's the successes, the students who don't slip through the cracks, the students who you do actually create that connection with. I'll answer this one with a little anecdote that I like to tell at our teacher training PD at the beginning of every year, to just kind of, encapsulate what our mission is in the daytime program. I had this one 4th grade student, we're gonna call him Jonathan. Jonathan was really a challenge for me throughout the school year. I was constantly emailing with his his classroom teacher, his homeroom teacher, to be like, what are your strategies with Jonathan? He sometimes would be really great in class and participate, and then sometimes he would just sit out in the back, and there was nothing I could do to get him to get up and dance. And he got into like a physical fight with another boy at one point, just outside of my classroom, and so he was having some behavior issues kind of across the board at the school. And by the end of the year, he really wasn't participating in dance class. So I had, the one-on-one check-ins with him after class pretty much every time. And finally I was like, Jonathan, at this point, you don't even know the dance. Like, I don't think that you can be in the performance, the end of the year performance. Like, you don't even know the dance. I need you to start standing up and participating in class. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do the dance with everyone. And that was motivational for a little while, but then he just continued to kind of sit out, and at that point he didn't know any of the dance. So I had a discussion with his teacher and the principal, and they were like, yeah, it's okay, he didn't participate, he doesn't know the dance, he'll sit out while his class goes up to perform. So day of the show, he shows up in full costume and is at the front of his line, and we don't have a budget for costumes in the daytime program. We have like budget for little props, but for the most part we'll be like, everybody wear all black for this outfit. So they were dancing to Footloose. And so he had all denim on. And he shows up in his like all denim outfit. He's at the front of his line. And I was like, Jonathan, what are you doing? And we talked about this. And he was like, Miss Ashley, I want to dance. And I was like, Jonathan, you don't know the dance. You didn't dance at all this year. Like, we had all these conversations about it. And he was like, my dad is here. My dad is here to watch me. It's the first time he's ever watched me do anything. And of course, my little heart just like broke in half, and I started tearing up and was like trying to hide it from him. And I was like, okay, yeah, you can be in the dance. And then he goes, I want to be in the front. And I was like, okay, Jonathan. So the performance happens, and they're kind of like doing other things. We've all had a Jonathan. So they're doing these other things. At the very end, there's like this big musical dance break, where Footloose just really hits it hard, and that's like all the big chunk of dancing. And he like looks over at me, and I'm like, and he like runs to the front to the chagrin of all of his classmates. They're like, what are you doing? And he's just in front, and he killed it. He did a great job. You did an awesome job. And so that's one of my favorite stories to tell, because I have all these, like, when he was sitting out, I have all these like apology letters, like, I'm sorry, Miss Ashley, like, I didn't dance today because I wasn't feeling good, and and so I just have all these notes from him throughout the course of the year that are like apology letters for misbehaving in my class or something. And it was just such a great way to finish off the year, and so encapsulating of a win in what
Absolutely.
we do.
All right. Nice. So, Bunny, same thing. What gets you up?
Well, the children, and the families that we serve, because we work in pretty impoverished areas of Los Angeles. We deal with a lot of immigrant parents, and they're having a rough time right now. So, we have parent workshops as a part of our process. And that's one of the first things we do before our program begins. We meet with parents, we explain to them what we're doing, what we're going to be doing with their children. We create a family arts project with them where they can explore their dreams together as a family and create a vision board together. So this is a very, very meaningful thing to me. And meeting, just getting close to the children, watching their progress, I can cite an example as well of a young boy that we worked with, Diego, in a particular school, who was on the autism spectrum, and he couldn't even sit through our music, the songwriting portion of our program. He held his ears and he rocked back and forth, and that was back when I was teaching. That was one of our first programs. And by the end of our program, he came up and wanted to give me a hug at the end, which left me in a puddle of tears because it wasn't something consistent with his personality. But it's all about the people, and it's all about the people we serve, the children we serve, allowing them to feel better about who they are, allowing them to feel important for who they are. not second-class citizens because they've come from another country. And that's the most important thing to me. That's what really gets me going.
Thank you. I know we are going to be screening the ripple effect in just a few minutes. So, Stephen, I want to bring the last question up to you of what gets you up in the morning. What makes you feel the most you in the work that you do?
I've always believed that what is the meaning of life? It's to make a difference. And I loved what I did as a child. I saw what it did for me. And I get up in the morning because I know that I have this tremendous burden. And it is a tremendous burden. The weight of the world feels like it's always on my shoulders. And I hate missing a day of work. When I go on vacation, I email everybody the entire time I'm gone. I'm one of those people because I can't miss a trick. I can't risk something being decided while I'm away. And it's sad, but I feel like I am the watchdog for all this. It was funny when you brought the people down to the board and they said, oh, there's some speakers down at the board, you need to come down here. I thought, oh my gosh. So I go running downstairs and I thought, oh, I know all these people. What are you talking about? That was very funny. But I get up in the morning because I know that what I'm doing is extremely important. And I'm not the only one that can do it, but I'm the person doing it at the moment. And I have to keep it going so that whoever takes over from me will have something to take over. And that's very important. I do look forward to a career as an actor again. I really do. But I only want 6 lines or less. I don't want to memorize anything. So, okay, if you're writing any screenplay, 6 lines or less. That's it. I get up because I know I have to. I have to be there right now. Those children need me, even if they don't know who I am. But I go into so many campuses, almost every campus on this district, and kids will say, hey, how are you? And they know who I am. When Rory Pullins first started with the district, it was just 4 years ago, he went to Normandy Elementary School. He walked on campus wearing the same kind of badge that I had, and this little boy came running up to him and said, oh, do you work with Dr. McCarthy? Rory looked down at this kid and said, yes, how do you know him? Oh, he was in my music class and he was showing me how to hold my trumpet better and everything. So I really do get involved with that. And I love that so much that I can have that one-on-one with a child and give them some expertise, some value. It is important what we are doing, and you should all feel proud about getting up in the morning and doing what you have to do. And you should all sleep very well at night because you've done a good job. So that's what gets me up in the morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all of you and to our panelists today. You have all been incredible speakers and elaborators and artists here on the stage. So thank you. Let's give them one more round of applause. And thank you, Joanne, for having us.